Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How's it going? It's me, Comic Crack, and it's Sunday. It's the Sunday wrap up. Doing it much earlier tonight. It's been an early day all around. We had our chat this afternoon. We had For the Love of Comics join us, and Colin from Comic Book Manifesto were in our Sunday floating chat. We started a couple hours earlier today just for the love of comics sake, so it's not 6 in the morning as he's struggling to keep his eyes open to have a chat with us. So it was fantastic. If you'd like to go back and watch on my channel, it should be archived there now. So maybe before we jump into, we won't be talking about all of these. Thriller, for example, I'm not finished yet, so I really want to give it its full I really want to give its full kind of chance, read all of the issues once I kind of gather up the rest of the issues. Excuse me. Once I gather up the rest of the issues, I'll have a chance to sit in and read the whole thing, and then we can talk about it in more detail, because I think there's a lot of stuff that happens in here that's worth kind of a closer look. There's some phenomenal art in the early few issues. It sort of drops off for me at around issue 5 and 6, I believe. But hopefully it picks up again. I've just got to find those last few. Pineapple Army, we've talked about a couple of times. 10 issues. I love it. It's well worth your time. But before we start, I had a weekly radio show called Dead Air that's still on UMFM 101.5 here in Winnipeg, the University of Manitoba. I was on Tuesday nights from 11 p.m. until midnight. I recently gave up that time slot in exchange for a Saturday afternoon time slot, for the main reason that the shows that I've done with the family, so with my kids and my wife, have always been a blast. So I found one that worked for all of us: Saturday afternoons, 4 p.m., so Central Standard Time here in Winnipeg. And it's just an hour every weekend. And we had our first episode on Saturday. So if you go to umfm.com, you can find my show Dead Air if you want to listen to the archived episodes. It was a really fun one. Lily had picked out a theme for this first episode, the theme of ice cream. So it was trying to get a bunch of songs that had something to do with ice cream, which we did pretty well. I think we got about 40 minutes worth of music. And then going on next week's, we're just going to kind of play. It's not going to be themed every single week. So check it out. You can listen to a few of these shows. I think the last 4 or 5 shows are archived there. Go have a listen if you're into music and you want to hear some stuff. Why don't we start out with Sergio Aragone's Louder Than Words. Not much to say about this. This is a 6-issue series from Dark Horse. What year do we have here? 1997. It's really great stuff. It's a lot of fun. Sergio, most of us, myself included, are very familiar with him from Mad Magazine days, from the Mad Marginals, and those were always little silent things. The sheer volume of work this guy was able to produce is pretty goddamn amazing. These are so much fun. Really nice, quick little gags. Very easy reads. Beautifully illustrated, even though the speed at which he draws is pretty exceptional as well. The only 3 issues I've found so far. On the hunt for the rest of these. I don't know how easy these are to come by. I feel like because it's Dark Horse and it's Sergio, I feel like they probably made more than 100 copies of this. But I mean, look at even some of these pages. Like, that's beautiful there. I'm trying out a new setup and I'm not sure I'm sold on it. I need a better light here for this. Anyway, I think you get the sense of it. No surprises. A hell of a lot of fun. Sergio Aragone's Louder Than Words. One of the ones that in Baker Street I've given a chance to before. I found issue number 4. I finished the first 5 issues. No, it was number 3 that I had found. I found this number 3 issue just yesterday. So I had a chance to sit down and read the first 5 now. Love it. I'm fully on board now. There was a moment it started to really click for me with issue number 3, but there was moments here with Guy Davis's art. Let me just find the pages here. This is when I came across this passage. This is what really sold it to me. Come on here. Maybe it was in issue 3. Must have been in issue 3 here. Let's see. He has a way of doing this atmosphere. Yeah, here it is. Good evening, Gore Vidal. How are you? He's got a way of portraying this atmosphere. This, to me, screams Guy Davis. These backgrounds, this rainy, stormy weather, these figures kind of placed in these scenes. Like, look at this panel here. Beautiful stuff. This, to me, is Guy Davis. And I think part of what I was struggling with was, like I talked about before, the language, but also just as his art at this stage. It feels like he's still trying to figure things out until you get to this. Like even that lamp post, the texture of everything on these pages, these 2 pages are when it fully clicked for me. So in issue number 3 here, and the story, honestly, the story got better and better. Sort of this take on Sherlock Holmes, set in a world where World War II never happened. I believe it's at the beginning of this issue. Yes, we have a newspaper, the London Daily Chronicle, talking about a gang fight that broke out in the last issue between the punks. But then down at the bottom, we also have Hitler dead at 100. So it's our world, just with a few major events that have not taken place. So it does a really, and even kind of putting this in this format, like sideways like this, it really felt like, and on this paper and paper stock, cover stock, it really felt like you were reading kind of an old tabloid newspaper. So our date here is 1988. So we have these kind of groups of punk rockers who are warring with each other. There's a side story of, well, nothing is really a side story. They're all intertwined at the end of the day, is what you find out by the end of this first arc. Some theft going on at a museum. There's some counterfeiting going on as well. All of that kind of leads around. There's some murders that are happening in the punk rock community with some of the groups. It's just fascinating stuff. So one thing I think this first 5 issues did really well for me, once I kind of got it, I guess, was setting up this world, introducing you to the characters in this world, and slowly unfolding bits of the stories. This is sort of our proxy. Is that the right word? This woman here represents us as the reader. She's thrown into this world when she is coming for school, looking for a place to live that's going to be cheap, so she can kind of continue her studies. And she gets drawn into this world and becomes kind of our main character's Watson, so to speak. What is her name again? Oh, crap. I can't remember now. Anyway, it's this woman here. And I'm completely blanking on her name now. Anyway, it really kind of pulls you in. I think the second 5 issues are just another arc, which I'm very curious to get into. I don't think he's done anything else in this world afterwards. The character designs took me a little bit to get used to, but once I got to this point, I think I'm on board with even the character designs. They seemed kind of separate at times from the environments, and not necessarily in like a good way, but he really starts to get into it. Like, that's a really nice panel there. It's really beautiful stuff. So very much a fan of Baker Street. I'm very, very glad that I gave it a second chance. Some things just deserve that other opportunity. I can't wait to get the rest of the issues. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got one other issue number 6, I think. Let me just have a look. Yeah, issue number 6. There was 10 total. So I'm almost there. I pointed this out last night to Night Streets, an amazing ad for Night Streets. You can't go wrong. Yeah, it's good. This, and I'm still really struggling to find the rest of the marquee stuff there, Gore, which is also in black and white. And what little bit of that I have, that is phenomenal work too. So I'm really, they keep popping up at, they keep popping up one at a time at my comic shop online there, Lone Star. But because of the shipping up here to Canada, I'd like to build a big order. I just can't afford to build a gigantic order right now, which is why I haven't picked up the ones that have been available. So highly recommended, Baker Street. Those annoying Post Brothers from Matt Howarth. Honestly, we were talking this afternoon about books that took you a while to come to. I've heard of Post Brothers for many, 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 many years. I see them every once in a while in the bins. They always jump out because Matt Howarth's work is so singular in kind of its look. Always kind of passed them up. I had this issue for the longest time because it's part of Vortex. This is all Vortex stuff, the Canadian company. We were talking about, I think Colin said this afternoon, 60, 64 issues, I think is how long this ran, which is unbelievable to me. Honestly, I've always just passed it by and not really in the back, way, way, way in the back of my head. Maybe I should try that out someday. Never really bothered. Another one I'm really glad I dove into. This is phenomenal. These 4 issues really captured my attention. The artwork itself is pretty fucking amazing. There's Howarth kind of deals in this, his characters themselves have this kind of cartoony feel, although saying that and then looking at this, they absolutely don't. I can't really put my finger on it. Like this character here, Ron Post, it's just kind of a goofy look to their faces that just didn't attract my attention. But pairing those kind of cartoony figures in this world that is so, so unique, they're able to traverse through different dimensions. And in their particular dimension, there's a club in this dimension, for example, that is broadcasting Leatherface from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre doing his kind of final dance of the movie. If you know that movie, one of my all-time favorites. The textures on the line work to build up some of these background images, the line work to create some of these atmospheres, especially when we get to kind of the interdimensional travel and things. Like, look at the amount of work in just a panel like this. I really need to do better with some lighting in here. I apologize. Man, was this ever a fun book. They're kind of these assassins for hire. They get this, they get word of a job to collect this box and deliver it. They end up losing the box. The box contains this demon, this creature that sucks the age out of people when you get close to them, to it rather. And it's the rest of these 4 issues are all this first arc. Like, look at this rock formation here. See if I can get that more in the light. There you go. So the rest of the arc is them chasing down this creature and getting kind of trapped and meeting other dimensional, meeting themselves from other dimensions, especially Ron Post. There's some narration happening by this guy, Yeah, you can see, okay, good stuff, Gore. There's narration that's happening. They can hear the voice, even though it's kind of narrating to us. It's like a news broadcast. Um, it's just such imaginative shit, man. Really, unlike, while it kind of draws from a lot of different sci-fi and kind of elements, it really does manage to feel like its own thing. Another thing Colin and I spoke about this afternoon was that Howarth is the kind of guy too that there's all these mini series offshoots, and a lot of them take place in this same kind of world. They're characters from the Post Brothers. They're characters who are kind of alongside them, Savage Henry being one, but also kind of secondary characters that are sort of in the same universe. So even though you might be reading a story that has none of the characters from the Post Brothers series, you're still sort of in that world. Very, very distinct voice. This is so good. I'm absolutely going to be on the hunt for more of these. So like I said, the first 4 issues is the first story arc. If you can find them, I'd recommend picking them up. It feels like, because of the difficulty with getting into this, yeah, I think 64 issues, Gore. I think that's what Colin said, 64 issues. And this is this 1986? This is 1985 is when this came out. So this is issue number 2. I don't know if there's a misprint on that cover. Looks like there might be, but whatever the case, I think those colors are just fantastic on the front there. I'm not sure if it's, I sort of jumped in wherever I could get my hands on. I have that Uber Dub mini series. I've got a couple of other things. He has some stuff online as well too. You can go to his website. So I'd suggest kind of just jumping in. If any of this stuff looks interesting to you, just kind of dive in. Whatever you see, pick it up. With some of his later work, though, I find that some of this detailed, textured backgrounds and environments kind of fall by the wayside. So some of them just don't have the same appeal that this kind of thing does. Like, look at this there. It's beautiful, kind of splatter and abstract and texture and just an absolute mess, ink dripping on the page. I think it's beautiful myself. So yeah, I can't imagine. I don't know how far reaching his stuff was in my personal life of kind of going through back issue bins. He's a character, especially this series, I end up seeing it quite a bit, but I don't know if that's just because I'm in Canada or if Howarth is just done so much work that he ends up being all over the place. Like Jared said in the comments, if one doesn't like surrealism, a book like this won't appeal the same. Yeah, and I mean, that was a big conversation this afternoon that I didn't know if I really wanted to get into. I wouldn't call this surrealism. I would call this sci-fi. This is ultimately a sci-fi story. And the characters are these assassins, and we're dealing with alien creatures, and maybe we're dealing with some, I don't know, I wouldn't call it surrealism, and I would even hesitate to call what Dan Clowes was doing with Velvet Glove. I think Dan Clowes thought what he was doing was surrealism. I think that one of the points, because I'm not smart enough in those moments to kind of speak intelligently about stuff, afterwards I thought about it, and Jared made the comment that we wouldn't have automatic writing without surrealism. I would argue that those two things are, I can see the lineage between those two. I feel that they're very different, though. To me, surrealism has some sort of message, even if it is really obscured. Whereas to me, automatic writing starts to get into kind of Dadaism and stuff that is nonsensical for the purpose of being nonsensical. I think of somebody like David Lynch, that there's these surreal elements to his stories, but man, he knows what he's writing. he knows the story behind there. It may be a mystery to us as the viewer. So I would add that to that conversation from this afternoon. But like I said, I'm not smart enough in those moments to articulate those kind of ideas very well. Yeah. Isn't surreal. If it's too strange, it will be off-putting. Absolutely. And I think that's also one of the things. There's this ability for people to just write things off as, oh, that's weird or too strange. And I think honestly, that's what I did with this book for the longest time. When I saw his art, it was just too weird, and it didn't really have much that I felt I could grab onto, because like I said, now I love the character designs. I think they're pretty great. But for the longest time, these characters, this style of art just didn't appeal to me, which is something else we talked about this afternoon. For the Love of Comics, Anshuman was talking about when he talks to people who say they didn't like the art, he's always curious about what is it about the art that you didn't like what is it, or that you felt was bad, sorry, that art was bad. When people say that, where it just ultimately comes down to, it's just not your taste. It's not that it's bad, because they're able to tell a story, they're able to make these characters and create these worlds. It's just that it doesn't appeal to you, which I find is more often the case, that it usually just comes down to taste. It's just not your taste. And this absolutely was not my taste for the longest time. But now, I mean, shit, man. Look at this. It's gorgeous, gorgeous stuff. Almost has like a Scoia'tain type of texture to those buildings in the background. I feel like I had another thread there and I've completely lost it. No, it's gone. Anyway, those Annoying Post Brothers. I'm a fan. I'm now a fan. I will be looking for more. I don't know. I should really dig into Vortex. I think maybe they did some collections. I'm not really sure, actually. Vortex is the one that did Big Black Kiss, or Black Kiss, right? Because then they did that Big Black Kiss, which collected some of the, or was that Renegade? I always get confused. Anyway, Matt Howarth also appeared in some heavy metal magazines as well. I think that might have been late 70s, early 80s. I don't have many from the 80s, but tonight I'm going to dig into some, see if I can find some Howarth work. Yes, yeah. So for Black Kiss, right? Yeah. So I should look to see if they have any collections. I don't know if I have the room for 64 issues of Post Brothers in the drawers here. So that one, and then ending it off tonight, ones that I just finished reading before I went live. This ain't your grandfather's, this ain't your grandpappy's Iliad. This is Iliad 2 from the golden age of 1986, I think, from Micmac Comics. And this is from, I believe it's 1986. Let's have a look, shall we? What do you want to bet there, Gore? Yes, 1986. North Bay, Ontario. And here you have your president, John McVicker, investment, vice president, Ronald McVicker, story, treasurer, Michael McVicker, art. So the McVicker brothers, boy, oh boy, was this ever a struggle. There was some unique art in here. Such a convoluted story with an alien race that eventually makes their way to the planet Earth, I believe. And a son is born. Yes, it's very brotherly. Lots of brotherly love tonight on Comic Cracks channel. With this kind of digging in the bins for this kind of thing, as excited as I was to finally have issue 1 and sit down and read both of these, they can't all be winners. This had its moments that were entertaining. It wasn't that great of a read, though, to be honest. There was some stuff that, was it's clear that there was some. It's clear that these are people at the beginning of their writing careers. Here's a good example: Celia, the Farseer. Though I am Celia, the far-seeing, I see frail not. So this idea, and that happens quite a bit. The narration gets repeated in some of the dialogue, and that happens quite a lot throughout this whole book. So it does make it even more of a struggle than it already is. The art has an appeal to me because of that kind of, again, people early in their career figuring things out. Everything is sort of these wide or mid shots. It's a kind of interesting. I think what they're trying to do is pretty brave. And then there's some things that have such a good look to it, like this creature here, made up from what looks like to be these zipatone textures, I think is fantastic. I really like the way that looks on the paper. But overall, it just didn't blow me away until I got to issue number 2 and found this backup story. Let's just get to it. And I'm not sure if this is one of those situations. Oh, and of course, you do get a map of our Iliad story, which is great. Gotta love a good map. Gotta love a good dungeon crawl map. So this is The Innocence of Sleeping Children. So it's one of those things that I don't know if, when it comes to comparing both of these stories, this one just stands up. Oh, look at this. Cthulhuhan Luke. Hello, how are you? I don't know if, because it's paired with this first story, it just elevates this one, but I kind of enjoyed this one. It's to be continued. There is a 3rd issue of Iliad 2, which I will still look for to complete. I got to complete the collection. And also, I kind of want to see where this story goes. There's a quote from musician Al Stewart from 1984, like a black hole in space or philosophy, useless but profound. And I actually found the song on YouTube. Accident on 3rd Street, is that what it's called? I think it's called that. So check out Al Stewart on YouTube and listen to that. So that was a nice soundtrack. I love when a comic can give you a soundtrack to its story. This feels like an artist that is looking in kind of fashion magazines and swiping from that, especially when you get poses like this. Like this is the Bay or Eaton's or Hudson's Bay or Zellers, or one of those fashion magazines you'd steal from your mom so you could go have a private moment in your bedroom looking at the underwear ads. Not that I know what that's about, but so it was intriguing. A robot and a woman on this piece of land. They find a hunter out hunting an elk, and they go out to try to stop him. And it turns out the elk is actually hunting the man, and the elk starts talking to them. But there's these really interesting moments here. I love the way this art looks. Again, I don't know if it's because of the comparison of the rest of it, but stuff like this on the final page here, you're all in serious trouble. There's a real nice, I love that pose. I love the use of the black ink there, the black spaces and the white, the chunkiness of the character. It's kind of a solid, squared off figure. Very, very appealing. So I'm very curious to hunt tonight to see if this artist did anything else. Because it's on my radar for sure. The other thing I love about some of these older comics is there's 0 ads in here, because it's their own company and probably the only thing that they put out. So it's printed all the way to the inside back cover. That's how much story they want to give you for a mere $2 Canadian, $1.70 in the US of A. So that's it. The Iliad 2, The Discovery. Dun, dun, dun. From Micmac Comics. That is it. Thank you very much, Cthulhuhan Luke, Gore Vidal. Thanks for hanging out. We will see you next weekend. We will be back, and hopefully Ross will be back with us. Yeah. Looking around, see if I got anything else. I do not. Have a good week there, fellas. Thanks very much for hanging out. We'll talk to you.